Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who? Mkhwanazi let the dogs out. Hey. Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. Today was day 2 of General Mkhwanazi in the ad hoc committee in Parliament. Yesterday was a different day. He was being led through his statement by the evidence leader. Today he was being questioned directly by members of Parliament who sit in that committee. They had different timestamps, ANC the most, MK, DA, EFF, and then the other parties, less amount of time. The man did not crack. He did not shake. He did not flounder. He's letting the dogs out. He kept the same energy as yesterday. And he actually came for Paul O'Sullivan, and he came for those media voices that we've been seeing. The media voices who are fishers of evidence. He came for them. You know those voices where, when after Mkhwanazi testified, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Then they went quiet. And they came back with other critical articles of him. They go quiet when they don't know what the line of march is, what the talking points are. And he came for them. It seems that General Mkhwanazi is circling the big Hosh Khari ancestors who are at the heart of the whole breakdown of organized crime policing. And there's levels to this. We've got Hosh Khari ancestors. We've got Hosh Khari dons. We've got Hosh Khari fathers, Hosh Khari mothers, and Hosh Khari, street soldiers. There's someone there in the middle. I'm convinced that Hangwani Morgan Maumela is in the middle of this thing. He goes up, he goes down. I don't think that he's the head honcho, but I think he's critical to everything that has happened. And, as a side note, did you see that they're having a prayer day at Tembisa Hospital to pray against corruption, pray the corruption away? Hangwani Morgan Maumela is free. He's rolling around in Mercedes-Benzes and all other kinds of cars. He's a free man. He's smiling. He's laughing. He's having the best time of his life with his Hosh Khari mama. But instead of trying to get this man into a space where he can be held accountable, real accountability for some of the things that have happened around him, there's a prayer day. Some of these things, they are what they are, but it's so bewildering. It's like, don't you see what this looks like to the public when this is the response? Of course, the SIU report and some of the interventions by the asset forfeiture unit were done, and those feel and felt like they were being done at the same time as this Madlanga Commission and now the ad hoc committee, as some attempt to look busy and look as if we're doing something. But this man is still a free man right now. But anyway, Mkhwanazi is coming. He's circling. He's not saying who the other members of the Big Five are. And in fact, Hangwani himself is not implicated as part of the Big Five. But he's showing people where to look. And I think at some point, some names that are interesting may come up that we're not right now listing as part of the Big Five cartel. Before we go to the Paul O'Sullivan highlight and the media highlight, let's do a quick overview of some of what was discussed. But you like the fact that, we went through the overview and you like what's coming. So stay tuned. Press like, comment, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. We're trying to hit 120,000. We're trying to end Hosh Khari behavior. We're trying to provide a service to the community, summarize and recap these events, look at the books that have come out, look at the legal and academic side of criminology, criminal law, criminal procedure, all of the things that, these universities were teaching us. We're bringing it to the streets of YouTube so that you, the audience who doesn't always have time to follow everything, can follow what's going down and try to get an understanding and make up your own mind about where you stand on these things. So, quick overview before we get to Paul O'Sullivan. It's coming. So, first thing that was discussed was the lawfulness of the order. And Mkhwanazi wasn't fully committed to the discussion about the lawfulness of the letter that was disbanding the test team, but he did give an indication that his view was that, it was getting into operational matters. And the other thing that he was suggesting, or the line of questioning that he was implying, was around that this letter may not have been written by the minister, but it was signed by the minister, It's the view of General Mkhwanazi that some police officers may have found ways to pressure the minister and other ministers. And he was then signing something that he did not draft as a result of that pressure. He's still of the view, and this was in response to questioning, that the minister is responsible for what he signed. But if you were paying attention to what Mkhwanazi was suggesting today and yesterday, is that those in the Hosh Khari security cluster, because there's the good guys and then there's the Hosh Khari security cluster, the rogue ones. Those actors, he pointed out, can compromise a person. And one of the examples that he pointed out was, they build you a security wall. He was, yesterday he was holding no punches, dead or alive. He was mentioning you. Natim Teta, may his soul rest in peace. Mkhwanazi was roasting you in the grave. He was not letting you rest in peace, even though he was saying rest in peace. So I'm sure you're typing an email there in the places beyond this plane, and you are sending complaints to some ancestral committee, ancestral ombud, to say, why is Mkhwanazi mentioning me? Isn't there a cultural understanding that thou shalt not speak ill of the dead? But the man was like, hey, this is what happened. If they buy you a security wall, they are necessarily at some point going to come and ask you for favors, or they're going to ask you to look away, or you're going to find that you're compromised in such a way that you can no longer hold these people to account, and they know that modus operandi. Interestingly, Hoover was accused of similar things within the American, security and intelligence cluster, because he would accumulate information against various people, including incoming presidents, and then they would realize that there was nothing that they could do to actually stop him. That's what he would do. So that's what Mkhwanazi was suggesting, that there is this use of, favors, and sometimes people are not aware that these favors are being used in that way. Once you accept those favors, once they go into the COVID funds to buy you stuff, then they're going to go into the COVID funds at their own discretion. And then now you have to cooperate because you also took the money. We're in it together now. If we go down, you go down. And that's what he was suggesting. He seems to hold the view that this letter actually could have come from somebody like General Sibiya, who works with, the likes of Vusi Matlala, according to the allegations, Brown Mkhwanazi, and he seems to have an overly critical view of the chief of staff himself, Nkabinde. Nkabinde came up yesterday. He came up again today. Julius Malema has a theory that, in fact, when Nkabinde took General Mkhwanazi to meet Senzo Mchunu before he became Minister of Police, Nkabinde was doing it for his own advantage, to actually raise his stock with the incoming minister or the soon-to-be minister, because he was trying to show him, look, bruh, I've got the toughest cop in South Africa. I've got the cop from your province who's involved with KZN policing, so we can protect you. Remember, the suggestion was also that Nkabinde and Robert McBride were actually helping Mkhunu with some issue which pertained to a death in KZN. So if that's true, and then the guy comes and says, look, you know who I hang out with? You know who I roll with? You know who my boy is? My boy is Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, dog. We chilling with Mkhwanazi out here. Let's meet. We'll have a tea. We'll have a coffee. We'll kick it. And in that activity, he was then sending a message to Mkhunu that I got you. And that's something that I think could have happened. But then Mkhwanazi would have not been necessarily aware. But Mkhwanazi seems to have this view that Nkabinde, Mkhwanazi, Sibiya, Matlala, all of these people seem to be in some type of cahoots with their activities, and Mkhunu may have been unwitting. He may just be saying this to give Mkhunu a way out and to allow for maybe a dignified exit as opposed to a crash and burn. And we'll have to see how Mkhunu himself responds to this. So that was one of the big discussions earlier, and it came up a bit later. The safety of his family came up. There was a discussion around, is he safe? Is his family safe? And he basically went full Rambo on that. He said, look, the state is going to protect me. The police service is going to protect me. And I think in so doing, in a way, he actually did succeed in protecting his family further, because I think Mkhwanazi has created a lot of pride within the South African police service. I think people are proud of him. They're happy to defend him. They're happy to advocate for him. He's brought back pride to that uniform in a way that, Bekele wanted when you were saying, chest out, stomach in, and all of that. But what Mkhwanazi has done is, because he has the pedigree from the force, because he has that acumen and that history and that gravitas amongst his peers as having been an elite police officer and then a senior police officer who was able to do big things, when he then says, the cops will protect me. I think that actually does have the effect of that more of them will take charge of his safety in a way that wouldn't even exist if he didn't put out that clarion call. But he wanted to make it clear he's not getting special treatment for his family. He's not operating at that level. He's relying on the police to protect his family. Then there was a discussion about IDAC, right? The Independent Directorate Against Corruption. And he was pointing out there that it seems like there was a strategy that was developed through IDAC and a few other institutions to deal with Mkhwanazi, and it's a threefold strategy if you pay attention. Number one, get his right-hand man or one of his most trusted generals, and this is General Khumalo. And this was done through that IDAC investigation into Khumalo, and it's very clear that General Mkhwanazi trusts General Khumalo, Dumisani Khumalo, as a policeman. There are lots of Khumalos, so we have to be specific. It's Dumisani Khumalo that he trusts as a policeman. If you think about it, when Mkhwanazi was giving his testimony at the Madlanga Commission, he was like, there's a guy coming. Khumalo. He was making it clear that I've given you some overview here, but there's a guy who's coming, who is going to now roll it all out and show you in video, in text, metadata, all of that stuff is coming. And it came. When General Dumisani Khumalo started speaking, I was like, hey, don't crash. Don't crash and burn. You are the promised one in the context of this. And he did not. That man gave me the impression that he's meticulous. He gave me the impression that he is a chess player. He gave me the impression that he is studious. He gave me the impression that he is systemic and methodological, and that he too could be on the dissection, cutting through stuff, but with less jokes. So General Dumisani Khumalo doesn't even interpret emojis. Send him this emoji, he'll say, curling. And apparently what seems to be bicep curl, commissioners. Oh, Zulu man, don't read no emojis, boy. Anyway, jokes aside, General Dumisani Khumalo gave me the impression that he's thorough. And we heard about these 5 pillars. We heard about, the data-led analysis methodology that he brought in. And it seems that he was coming at all of these people. And we saw with the rhino issue where he was critical to dealing with the poaching issue to an extent, and also with the Sindiso Makaka issue, that he was really getting close to a lot of people and solving cold cases, even to the point where many high-profile people in KwaZulu-Natal were arrested for that, and other, political killings which happened, they did get arrested. The task team was working well. So if you want to deal with Mkhwanazi, or if you want to slow everything down, you have to find a way to slow Khumalo down. Because he's somebody that Mkhwanazi showed they've been working together for a long time, work well together, they share notes, they compare notes. You would have to remove General Khumalo from the front lines so as to slow down the investigation and weaken Mkhwanazi. So they seem to have then pursued that strategy by using information that was then given to members of parliament, etc., and narratives spread throughout media to get Dumisani Khumalo. Right? And this also seems to have been used to compromise key information, which was important in keeping people safe. So in June this year, the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption arrested Khumalo at the OR Tambo International Airport in connection with these senior appointments that he was accused of appointing unlawfully or whatever the case was. And to me, that arrest was over the top. To arrest someone in that manner over the issue of, someone got a promotion that they didn't deserve. That was very bizarre. I mean, right now, there's a minister who had a chief of staff who was appointed, a 22-year-old, unqualified. And that's the Minister of Social Development, CCC Tolashe. Right? And there's another scandal about her and Mjolo behavior. I've been meaning to make an episode about that. But as you can see, all eyes on the commission, all eyes on the ad hoc committee. So, major scandal, rightfully so. But if she was dramatically arrested at the airport, question would be asked about the disproportionate nature of that. And then in the Khumalo instance, the General Khumalo instance, he was then later unable to continue with his work because of the extremely restrictive bail conditions. And I think this is part of what made General Mkhwanazi come to the public, because 31 December You take this action, you disband the political killings task team. Then we see all of this movie play out between January and 5 March. We go to Parliament, we try to raise the issue in Parliament, and yet still we're not prevailing, we're not being successful. Then you arrest Khumalo to get rid of him. And then now we see members of Parliament leaking certain information. In talking about safety, Mkhwanazi highlighted that he's more concerned about the Gauteng counterintelligence team and their safety. And this is part of, I think, the third approach of the Hosh Khari Cardinals. The Hosh Khari Cardinals, they seem to have made an attempt to neutralize members of the GCI Ops investigating team. Mkhwanazi said, these people were put in a safe house to operate from. Remember, the other issue around the magistrate was that people like Molefe, them getting bail, became a risk to members of the GCI Ops because these guys, they're hitters. They're hitmen for real. They pay masters of hitmen. Nkabis will show up. People disappear, right? So Mkhwanazi said these guys were put in a safe house to operate from. But then a member from Parliament published photos of that house on social media. And their vehicles, the Gauteng vehicles, were exposed to the public. And what that did is that it kept making those people vulnerable because now they can't investigate fully and their anonymity has been removed. It's important when you're doing investigations against these types of criminal cartels, Hosh Khari behavior cartels, to have anonymity. That's why you often see the GCI Ops covering their faces. It's not like an ICE thing in America where they cover their faces because they are doing some funny business there with immigration, and they don't want to be held accountable for their violations of the law. Here, it's being done to really allow these people to be able to do their work and maintain some level of safety. Now, Mkhwanazi points out that the Gauteng officers cannot visit their families anymore without protection. And he said with his team, at least the team in KwaZulu-Natal has him, other, SAPS officers. The Gauteng team had General Khumalo, but he's been arrested and then under the bail judgment told he can't come near the offices, he can't do anything. And he was even singling out, the senior investigators from the IDAC as being people who are part of this bad part of it. He said there are good people there, but there's also some people that he's genuinely concerned about. Now, this is why this Fadel Adams and Glenys Breitenbach stuff matters, is because they were part, in Mkhwanazi's view, of letting key information out there, which then compromised people who were investigating the Vusi Matlalas, the Katiso Molefes, the Big Five cartel, and all of the intersections they're in. They may have thought they were doing it for good reasons. They may have thought, oh, wow, look, I got a top secret document. Why are these, police units buying these properties? But Mkhwanazi was pointing out some of the things you got to go in, you got to hide certain information, you got to hide people. If you're trying to infiltrate the Ferrari gang, you can't go there with the bicycle. You can't go there with the Taz or whatever car he was talking about. And it makes sense, right? And I think this has been a lot of the narrative, is that every time we hear that money was spent by, in the COVID fund, it's always been done or given a narrative within the media that there's something malicious and nefarious about that. And that's why he was pointing out that Diane Kohler Barnard could have gotten all the information she needs. The Auditor General does look at all of this information. So in saying what they were saying, they were actually compromising ongoing investigations and maybe slowed them down for months. Right? There was a discussion as well around correctional services. They were not spared from criticism. The Big Five guys being able to access cell phones and other contraband within prison show that these people can still be operating in ways that can harm society, and their drug business may still be continuing unabated right now. Right? He also testified about this unauthorized deployment of the elite police units, the ones in Richards Bay, but he didn't go much further. I think he's still giving people, room to navigate or negotiate behind the scenes, because he didn't go so far as to hammer the president on that. And in fact, he was very respectful of the president overall. That's my commander in chief, etc., etc. I respect him. And, I think he means it genuinely. And if ever he thinks that there are issues that go into that realm of the political elites, he's not going to do so recklessly, I think. And I think we can see that. I mean, whatever he knows, if he wanted to, he could say a variety of things, but he's not chosen to say those things, right? And even with the dramatic attire that was bothering people, it was still just a symbolic gesture. It's not like they did anything beyond that. Now, let's get to the most explosive parts of the day. Have you subscribed? Check if you've subscribed, right? Let's grow the channel. Let's get to another level. We're aiming for 120 by the end of the month. Need your support. Press that subscribe, press that notification, comment, share this. Somebody was showing me yesterday that his community group, somebody shared a clip from one of the videos. But hey, that person was being mischievous. Because when I say that thing that MK is going to quaz at a high rate of quaz velocity, that's the part they took. They were like, Jamie Mighty says MK is going to quaz at a high rate of quaz velocity in 2026, which I think they will. Particularly in KZN, I think they're going to win KZN outright. But that was not what the video was about. So whoever's in that group thinks, this one is hardcore MK. Other people think it's hardcore EFF, whatever. So it comes with the territory, right? Other people are like, why is this guy even speaking about these things? Hey, I went to law school. Then I went to a business school. And I'm doing a master's in this stuff. Oh, respect me. Anyway, let's continue. Most explosive parts. Critique of the media. The general is not letting the media off the hook, and I think it's fair, right? I don't think the media should act like they're holier than thou. I don't think they should act like they're always consistent. I think it's fair to have scrutiny and criticism of everybody, and media is not exempt. He is justified to be skeptical, in my opinion. Why? Some journalists who are close to powerful politicians historically have written scathing articles about Jacob Zuma, Paul Mashatile, Julius Malema, but this time, instead of writing in favor of the whistleblower, historically we've seen journalists writing in favor of the whistleblower, protect whistleblowers, all of that stuff. We were there. We saw Gupta leaks. We saw all of these things. We know what the treatment of journalists towards whistleblowers has been. But when it's Mkhwanazi, the standards have changed, right? That's called shifting goalposts. That's what it's called. Double standard. Hypocrisy. I remember when we used to sit at the ad hoc committee, observing the hypocrites. That's what he's talking about, the hypocrisy. Hypocrisy, right? So, in this instance, when he gave testimony, those people were typing, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Evidence guy. Ubufagazi. All of a sudden, you want to see the ubufagazi? The evidence? The ubufagazi? You don't want to see the ubufagazi this whole time. In fact, at the Zondo Commission, when testimony was given, you were saying it's evidence. Even though some testimony was incredulous. There was a guy who came to the Zondo Commission and said he was given 600 million in black plastic paper bags by the Guptas. He said the Guptas gave me 600 million. They offered it to me in black plastic bags. When I heard that, I did not believe it. I still don't believe it up to now. Think about the dynamics of fitting 600 million into black, not duffel bags, black plastic bags. Those things would rip. How many would you need? How heavy is 600 million? When did he count it? 600 million, how many hours would it take you to count 600 million? Then say no after counting the whole 600 million. Look, if I gave you R1 million and you were counting it and maybe you had the power to say no after the million, maybe 600 million, you counted 1, 2, 3, got all the way to 600 and you said, nah, I'm good. That testimony was being reported to us without any questions or requests for evidence. But now Mkhwanazi comes telling us stuff that the public has already observed and knows experientially, telling us stuff that we've seen reports about from that very same media. But now when Mkhwanazi comes and speaks on it, all of a sudden there's a problem. All of a sudden there's an issue. All of a sudden it's, where's the evidence? We've even seen the same thing. There's a lot of reporting that's missing on some people. And even if you think about Hangwani Maumela, we still don't have a front-facing picture of this man. Babita died in 2021, right? That's what this book says right here. And it's a well-written book. I recommend it. Go buy it. And we learn a lot about some of the characters here, but there's a lot of gaps. Let me show you. Chapter 22 from page 157 is the one that deals with Hangwani Maumela. Chapter 22 is 4 pages long. This is how many pages it is? 4. 4 pages. This guy is supposed to be the most critical guy in the whole thing. And there's only 4 pages. Just these ones. Just that. That's the length of it. How can we say that we've done a sufficient job in dealing with that? How can we realistically say we've gotten the full extent of the coverage on some of these critical people? There are connections here that have not even been explored fully, right? So in as much as this is a good book, and I do recommend that you buy it, the media hasn't done everything that they need to do on this. We don't even have a picture of this guy Hangwani Maumela. We're in 2025 now. We still don't know what this guy looks like. You know, you have to get creative to even try to find some pictures of him. This is what General Mkhwanazi had to say about the media.
There's been a lot of pushback indirectly through the journalist. A lot of media stories written. Some of those journalists that wrote bad things, they are starting to change their tune now. And they start connecting the dots themselves, which is interesting for me because, well, if they made a mistake, they must acknowledge that and be objective about things. It remains known that there is a relationship between some of the police officers with some people out there that speaks a lot. Whether those people that speaks a lot, they are doing those things being informed by police officers or not, I cannot confirm for now. But I know that Mr. Paul O'Sullivan is one of the very close friend of Charles Beer, business partner, doing whatever thing they do together. The intelligent man in the country that is allowed by the state security or the intelligence community of this country to do as he please in this country. Because he brings in listening devices, he does as he please. And nobody bothers challenging him. And that is unfortunate. So he's one of the people that came very vocal on TV shortly after I made that press briefing. So whether was that voluntarily to defend Sbiya or was it due to Jaras Sbiya asking him to do that? I don't know. But I know very well that there's been a pushback indirectly from some of my colleagues.
Thank you, General. General, then I'm going to go to the allegations that you've made against my colleague, Diane Kohler-Barnard. You've accused her of misusing intelligence information. Have you seen any official classified documentation that is labeled with the information on that you cite is in fact being classified?
The list of the properties that were bought by crime intelligence are attached to a statement. If you're not in possession of the DA statement that she issued, she attached that report. That is on one, which is issued by her. The second one I read to you yesterday. The questions that she asked in your portfolio committee, which she shouldn't have. Perhaps you should have told her that, colleague, this question does not belong here. But it went through your portfolio committee to the police and the response came in the same fashion. So those are some of the one examples that I can bring up now. Anything else that Ms. Kohler-Barnard might be involved with, I think we'll leave it to a in-camera discussions with the bodies that's supposed to. Because the nice thing is that people travel and they meet. And wherever they meet, there's cameras. And wherever they meet, there are people that are observing. And wherever they talk, there are footprints left on phones. Even if they delete messages, we retrieve them.
So yeah, that's what the man said. And I agree with him. I think that there are serious questions that need to be asked. There are serious explanations that need to be made. Now, he went further and gave some clues and took some very strong shots at Paul O'Sullivan. Mr. O'Sullivan has been an interesting figure in all of this. He's also said he already supports Sbiya. He's not seen evidence of any wrongdoing by Sbiya, even though we saw that there were concerns about Sbiya at the city of Joburg, that there were other concerns about Sbiya dating back to that mission into Zimbabwe where people ended up dying. There's a whole lot that Shadrack Sbiya would have to explain if he goes to the commission. And if they really put his feet to the fire, I don't know how he's going to come out of this. But now, even Paul O'Sullivan may have to answer some questions. And you could see from the way Malema was going, and this came from Malema's side. Malema actually surprised a lot of people today because he's been almost like very aggressive against Mkhwanazi. Mkhwanazi, Mkhwanazi must not, we want Mkhwanazi now. And some people were like, oh, Mkhwanazi's got something on Julius. Julius is so angry. Mkhwanazi's got something on him. And then Mkhwanazi came, and then Julius was like, let's chat. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. He did push back every now and again, so it wasn't like a sweetheart interview. He even criticized him on how he described the judiciary, and Mkhwanazi stood his ground and said there's stuff that he can't divulge yet because the criticism so far that has been able to be shared publicly has been about magistrates. And Julius is like, well, aren't you exaggerating when you then say the judiciary is compromised when you're just talking about magistrates? Mkhwanazi says there's stuff about judges that would shock us if we heard it. But they got to talking about Paul Hang Up O'Sullivan. Remember how you hung up on Sakina? Sakina is my queen, man. I love Sakina Kamwendo. She asked the tough questions. And if you're lucky, she won't ask you tough questions. But if there's a hot topic and you go there, you're going to have a real interview. Not that what Brown Mkhwanazi got the other day. That wasn't a real interview. You need to take Brown to Sakina Kamwendo for a full hour. 1 hour, Brown Mkhwanazi, Sakina Kamwendo. 1 hour, Senzo Mchunu, Sakina Kamwendo. I would even bring her in as a special guest to Parliament. Just to say, Sakina, from a journalistic perspective, what do you have to... So you see, I love some people within the media as well. Like, it's not one skipper. People mustn't act like, they are the media. Like, you're not the whole media, bruh. You're one person. So whenever people talk about the media, don't feel like you have to defend everything in the media. Now, here's what was said about Mr. Paul O'Sullivan. He was not playing. Paul is going to be in trouble when he goes to Parliament, if he goes to Parliament. I hope they add him to the witness list because these questions were not a joke.
Do you know the relationship of President and Paul O'Sullivan?
No, I don't know how related they are. But I just don't know that Mr. Paul O'Sullivan speaks a lot about being in contact with many people, including the president. So I have not gone deeper into establishing the type of relationship they have.
Does he have do you know of any relationship between him and one of the president's advisors?
Mr. Paul O'Sullivan? No, not I know of. I know that there is a lot of talks about engagement, I think, with Mr. Chauke and amongst others. But again, it's something that it's communicated out there, but I never really got deeper to investigate the type of relationship that is there.
Through our own intelligence, were you able to establish that Paul O'Sullivan is a member or a former member of M16?
Well, I have not necessarily got the briefing in details from intelligence in that regard. I've had the talks about it. I don't have the full briefing. What is of interesting is that he's got citizenship in 3 countries, and that makes me wonder. And he seems to have been a person who got angry when he was disturbed by being removed from the ports of entry in South Africa, the main port of entry at the time, which was Johannesburg International Airport. When he was removed, he did not take that kindly. So it will make me conclude that there were some things that were happening in that airport that made him angry.
So we'll be correct to say Mr. Paul O'Sullivan is one of the rogue elements that are destabilizing SAPS and wanting to capture every senior police officer at SAPS. And if you don't cooperate, he start engaging in blackmailing activities.
With no doubt, I'm going to invite the Parliament through the structures of intelligence or structures of security and whoever structures you can come up with to look at the time of Mr. Robert McBride Turner as the head of IPD. How they were interacting with Paul O'Sullivan. Bank movements, money movements, the meeting venues, the cell phone locations where they meet, how they engage in terms of investigation. I'm saying this to the members because it is that which Mr. Nkabinde told me, who is now a chief of staff in the office of the minister, that operations of IPD were planned, coordinated, and executed at at Paul O'Sullivan's house. That was his words to me. So I'm going to require a request that such be investigated in details, because the phone will put McBride in this place, will put Paul O'Sullivan in this place, will put Nkabinde in this place, and others. And when that investigation is conducted, nobody can deny it, because we'll know exactly that all of them have been operating guided by Paul O'Sullivan. And that is on one side. And I'm interested to know, honorable members, as to who is the author of the report that was produced when the city of Johannesburg, as well as the National Commissioner, wrote to the State Security asking them about the legality or otherwise of the gadgets that were bought by the city of Johannesburg at the time when Jairus Bia was in charge of the security in that place. And who is the company that supplied that gadget? And how was that gadget sourced from the country in Europe where it comes from, in the UK? And I want to also recommend an investigation against the purchase of the similar gadget that was bought by DPCI back in 2010, where Jairus Bia was working at DPCI at the time. Whether such was bought legally, who are the supplier, and who's the manufacturer of the things. And I'll want the parliament to check every financial records of Mr. Paul O'Sullivan and all the individuals I've mentioned. And so that we're able to trace and draw a conclusion whether is Paul O'Sullivan a clean man or is an agent. So I think based on that investigation, we're able to conclude whether is he indeed a clean man or he is what is being said in public, an agent. If he's a clean man, why he does what he does? If he's an agent, who is he working for? But it is time that this country must not sit back and be run by Mr. Paul O'Sullivan.
There's a lot from that clip, as you can see, that was suggested about Paul O'Sullivan, a lot that was clearly implied about him, and the reasons why Paul O'Sullivan would be opposed to General Mkhwanazi, supportive of General Shadrack Sibiya. Today was another day of explosiveness. We're going to have to summarize the Mkhwanazi testimony to Madlanga, the Mkhwanazi testimony to the ad hoc, the complementary nature, the differences, compare, contrast. We're going to have to do that because it's a lot. But let's meet in the comments. What did you think about all of this? Are we getting closer to the Hosh Khari behavior, or are we still as confused as ever? Let me meet you in the comment section.